Once upon a time, it seemed like every time you turned on BookTube, somebody was there talking about Dungeon Crawler Carl. Well, it happens to be my absolute favorite LitRPG series that's out there right now, but the question remains, what else is out there for you in LitRPG, specifically book number ones of 10 series that will grab you? They will hook you right off the bat after you've gotten through Dungeon Crawler Carl, or maybe as an alternate if Dungeon Crawler Carl isn't right for you. We're going to get into lots of these things today. I've got lots to share with you. We're going to talk about ratings. We're going to talk about stars. We're going to roll the intro. Hey everybody, welcome back to BellTube. I'm Brian Bell, and today we are going to talk about some LitRPG. Now, I understand that this channel is mostly focused on fantasy and sci-fi, but I have promised for quite some time that I was going to make some more LitRPG content because I have read hundreds of books in the genre. I'm going to share with you today 10 series, specifically the book ones of these series, that I think are worth your time, that I truly enjoyed. And I'm going to back it up with not only what the stars ratings might be on Goodreads and on Amazon, but I'm also going to share with you the sheer vast number of ratings that some of these book ones have, because I think it's going to surprise you. I know when I did a little bit of research to do this video today, it surprised the heck out of me. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. The first series we're going to talk about today is He Who Fights with Monsters by Travis Deverall, otherwise known as Shirtaloon. Now, this is a fantastic series. The first book is actually just titled He Who Fights with Monsters. The premise of this book is basically a guy from Australia named Jason is sucked into another version of Earth, but instead of technology on that Earth, it's all magic. This is themes of found family. This is themes of Jason kind of stranger in a strange land. It's hilarious. The author is really funny. If you like Dungeon Crawler Carl, if you like that kind of sense of humor, if you like this channel and you like my sense of humor, I think you're probably going to find something about He Who Fights with Monsters that resonates with you. Let's talk about some credibility for a second here. On Goodreads, and I've got notes for all of these. I couldn't bear to memorize them all, but so pardon me if I look down a little bit. But on Goodreads alone, He Who Fights with Monsters book number one has over 23,000 ratings with an average star score of 4.43. Over on Amazon, it's got over 16,000 ratings with an average star score of 4.7. This is not a handful of people who are reading these books. There is a giant population of LitRPG readers. I think to some degree they may be more over on Facebook or more on Reddit than on YouTube, but I promise you that is changing, especially because we've seen so much about Dungeon Crawler Carl and the fact that his series just got picked up by a traditional publisher. You're going to see more of that, at retail, but we're going to plow through these series as quickly as I can. Series 1, He Who Fights with Monsters, self-titled book one. I think you're going to find something to love about it. Okay, moving on to our second series. This is going to be The Good Guys by Eric Uegland. And if you're like me and you listen to a lot of audiobooks, the Audible is done by the great, I've talked about him 100 times on this channel, the great Neil Hellegers. He brings this to life like Jeff Hayes brings Dungeon Crawler Carl to life. I really love this author because I think his jokes and his sense of humor are very much in line with mine. Our premise here is basically a low-level criminal that's given a choice to go to this alternate world where these gods are playing games. So our main character, Montana, is one of these guys, and he's super overpowered, and he's way too strong for his own good. If you like books that kind of have almost like a superhero type of a main character, The Good Guys might be a great series for you. Montana's hilarious. His found family is excellent. Neil Helligers does just an amazing job with all the companions on this. And we follow Montana through his adventures in the land of Valdrani. Now, is this series, well reviewed? Was it well read? Yeah, there's over 5,000 ratings for book 1 on Goodreads. There's an average star score of 4.3 right on Goodreads alone. If we move over to Amazon, we've got over 3,700 ratings and an average star score of 4.6. So yeah, very highly regarded. That's our second series we're talking about. Let's move on to number 3. And coincidentally, number 3 is the same author, Eric Uegland, and it's not the good guys. No, it's the opposite. It's the bad guys. And book 1 is called Scamps and Scoundrels. Here we follow a main character named Clyde Hatchett who comes to Valdrani, and he's basically going to be a rogue type character. He's a thief, and rather than getting planted in this mountainous countryside like Montana does in The Good Guys, Clyde Hatchett's put into one of the huge capitals called Glatton, and he's working really in the underbelly of the city. He's learning magic. He's learning how Valdrani works. He's learning what respawning is like. If you've played any games before, sometimes you get more than one life in a video game, and he's come to find out the hard way a little bit about that. But The Good Guys is exactly the same kind of humor level that you get in, The Bad Guys is the same kind of humor you get in The Good Guys. Let's talk about the ratings. It's a newer series than The Good Guys. There are less ratings, but we're still talking about over 2,900 ratings on Goodreads with an average star score of 4.44. That's even higher than The Good Guys. If we go look at Amazon, we're over 2,100 ratings with an average star score of 4.7. Super highly regarded. I love this series. The Bad Guys, book 1, Scamps and Scoundrels. Don't be afraid to check it out. Okay, now we're going to get into another series here, and that's called Awaken Online. The author is Travis Bagwell, and book 1 is called Catharsis. I have mentioned this one and a few of these others in my LitRPG starter guide, but I really, really think Awaken Online is high quality LitRPG, both from a story, with compelling characters, with a plot that makes sense, that is engaging to the reader, that just isn't overly crunchy. And what I mean by that is there's not a whole lot of statistics. You're not, dealing with a lot of data being thrown at you that some of the other ones, not so much in the series that I've got listed for you today, but some of the genre can get a little bit kind of data heavy. Awaken Online's not like that. We have a main character, also coincidentally named Jason, who is given an opportunity to play a VR game with a headset and a chamber that you go into, and you are in essentially like a World of Warcraft type of a game. Now, he's basically just getting out of high school, or he's about that age, and his main rival happens to be the son of the owner of the game company that everybody's playing. So while in real life his rival is not a very good guy, on the inside, he's trying to portray himself as the nicest angel in the world, which drives our main character, Jason, nuts and decides to be basically the opposite. He's going the necromancy route. So if the series where you've got a guy who's really at heart a great human being, but decides in the game world to play almost an evil character, you understand his motivations pretty well. But if you want to come at a series from the vantage point of a villain, Awaken Online might work for you, because it's really interesting how they make the villain seem not so much the villain. You got to take my word for it. Awaken Online's great. I read this, I sight read this. I don't do this one on Audible. There's reasons for it. I can let you know in the comments why. And by the way, if you have any questions at all about any of these series that I'm talking about here today, leave them in the comments, because not only have I read, hundreds of these books, there are some people in the BellTube community who are even more read in the genre than I am, and that takes something. And they're some of the nicest people in the world, and they will help direct you or help answer some of your questions. It's an amazing group of people. Let's get into the next series. Okay, so this next series is totally different than everything else on the list. The author is Dakota Kraut. The series is called The Divine Dungeon, and book 1 is called Dungeonborn. There is a subgenre within LitRPG basically called a dungeon core. And a dungeon core subgenre is where we're not so much following the adventurers going through a dungeon. We are following the journey of the dungeon itself because it's sentient. And in this particular case, we have a dungeon named Cal who has to figure out how to build himself, how to build rooms within his own dungeon, how to create monsters that are, engaging for the adventurers that walk in, what type of loot he wants to offer, what his ambitions are to grow as a dungeon. Now, I know off the top, as I say it out loud, this might not sound appealing to a lot of people. But if you're somebody who likes D&D, for example, and maybe you've always wanted to come at D&D from the perspective of the dungeon master or the DM, a dungeon core genre might be interesting to you. To be honest with you, it's not my favorite subgenre, but I believe that Dakota Kraut has done a fantastic job with the Divine Dungeon series. I really like it. If you want to explore around in the world of LitRPG, sooner or later, you're going to run into basically a dungeon core type of a book. This is a nice place to start. Again, let's talk about some ratings. Over 12,000 ratings on Goodreads with an average Goodreads star ranking of 4.22. Over on Amazon, over 5,500 ratings with an Amazon rating, a star rating of 4.6. It's very well read. These books are absolutely selling just because you haven't seen them in the bookstore yet. And I use that word very strongly because, as I mentioned, Dungeon Crawler Carl just got picked up by a traditional publisher and Cradle's been out for a long time. So you're going to see this genre pop up in physical quite a bit because that's what businesses do. They see what something is selling. And you guys have seen the Romantasy, right? Sarah J. Maas has her own section. That'll be another video. Anyway, let's move on. The next series that I want to share with you today is called New Era Online. This is by an author named Shamir Kuznets. I'm sure I just butchered his name. Book one's called Life Reset. This is, again, a little bit kind of like an MMORPG where we have our main character, whose name is Oren, playing in this game. And it's known that it's a game. He's not transported to another world or anything like that. But he's in this game, and he is the guild leader of the biggest guild in the game. Well, we find out on about page 1, the rest of his guild can't stand him. He doesn't really know why. He seems like a nice guy, but they kill off his character. And if you've ever played an MMORPG or an RPG for an extended period of time, you know that a true character death is devastating because it took you just an unbelievable amount of time and effort and work to get to that point. They figure out a way to kill off his character and erase him from the database. The computer regenerates him, but it does something strange. It regenerates him as an NPC, a goblin. He's the first actual person to be playing a goblin in game. And what does he want? He wants revenge. So we have a revenge story here. We also have a story that, has a lot of base building in it. So if you're the kind of a gamer out there that likes base building and strategy types of things, Life Reset might be a great book for you. So Life Reset as book one, check this out. We've got over 8,100 ratings on Goodreads. It's got an average star score of 4.3. Over at Amazon, we've got over 7,000 ratings with an average star score of 4.7. Super highly rated, super highly regarded. Life Reset. Yeah, it's really good. There's a lot of comedy, and if you like Dungeon Crawler Carl, I have even better news. If you go to Audible, the narrator of this series is none other than Jeff Hayes and his Sound Booth Theater. I happen to have listened to this series before I did Dungeon Crawler Carl, and yeah, again, same, he elevates this written word to a totally new level. We learn about these AIs that are in game. The players become trapped within the virtual world, and now what are they going to do? It's a very fun series, and the cool part is it's not a huge one. It's a 6-book series, and it's over. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to share with you that none of these series, or especially none of these book ones, are overly long. They don't overstay their welcome. It's one of the reasons that I picked this list the way that I have, so you don't have to make this gigantic time investment into a book one just to figure out it's really not for you. I'll give you an example. The Wandering Inn, right? So it's hugely popular LitRPG, but if you're an Audible listener, book one is 45 plus hours. That's asking a lot out of a book. One, I'm sure it's great. I haven't got to it yet, purely because of the time that's required to do it. And I've got so many other books that I got to cover on the channel, but none of these books overstay their welcome. They're all really fantastic. Let's move on to the next series. Now, for our next book series, we're going to go back to an author that I mentioned previously, and that's Dakota Kraut. His series here is the Completionist Chronicles, with book 1 being called The Ritualist. Now, this is an interesting premise. We have our main character, Joe, who's basically a chopper medic. He's either in the Army or in the Marines, but he's a medic, and it goes down, and he becomes a quadriplegic, and he's extraordinarily unhappy with this turn of events, but there's a technology available that if he wants to transfer his consciousness into this video game world, he can do so and live out basically a much, much, much longer extended life in the game world than he can in a hospital. So he decides to go for it, and he does that. What he doesn't understand, though, is when it gets into the game world, the class that he ends up becoming, and again, we talk about classes a little bit in this genre because, you know, in most D&D types of campaigns, you've got your fighters and your mages and your thieves, rogues, barbarians, what have you. He finds a class that the game basically hides from everybody else, and it's called a Ritualist. And this has a lot of hidden abilities. If you're somebody that likes discovery, if you're somebody that likes games that have untraditional types of main characters and character development, if you like superheroes that have kind of weird powers that aren't just Superman and Batman, then Joe the Ritualist might be something that you're interested in. Let's take a look at the ratings and the review scores. It's pretty incredible. Over 14,000 ratings on Goodreads. It's got an average star score of 4.32. Over at Amazon, we have over 8,500 ratings with an average star score of 4.7. People are reading these books, folks. I think you're really going to like the Completionist Chronicles. Let me know in the comments if that's the one that you go with. Now, the next series that I want to talk about is one that I read quite some time ago, so it's not very fresh in my mind, but it's called Viridian Gate Online by James Hunter, and book 1's called Cataclysm. Here we have a premise that we're in future Earth, about in the year 2040, 2050, something like that, and there's a 9-mile wide asteroid headed to Earth. There's no stopping it. Everybody on Earth is basically going to die, but the wealthy have built these kind of mind servers underground that you can upload your consciousness into and be in this game world as long as you'd like to be, because everything on Earth is going kaput. So we have our main character. He jumps in. It's definitely a bit of a risk because not everybody who tries to get into these servers, their bodies and their minds don't sync up and they just immediately die. But given the alternative that an asteroid's about to hit the Earth, not a whole lot of choice, right? I think you and I would probably do about the same thing. He becomes essentially a dark elf type of a character. He leads a bunch of people. It's again themes of found family. There's definitely good guys and bad guys in this world. There are people that have been planning this for a long time that sort of front-loaded their characters with all the in-game wealth possible because they knew this was coming, whereas there's other people like our guy Grim Jack gets involved and he's starting from scratch. So it's a cool adventure. Again, my mind's not totally fresh on it, but I know I really liked it. So did a lot of other people. As I take a look at this, there's over 5,700 ratings on Goodreads with an average score of 4.11 stars. And over on Amazon, we've got over 3,100 ratings with an average star score of 4.5. It's doing really well. I like it. It's got a lot of books in it. So if you're somebody that likes kind of an extended series, and he's actually grown the series where he's got other authors now engaged in the universe as they build it up, it's pretty neat. Viridian Gate Online, that is number 8 on our list today. Now, the 9th on our list today is one of the very first LitRPG series I ever read. I fell in love with it immediately. I had no idea what the genre was really about, and that is The Way of the Shaman by Vasily Mehanenko. It's Russian. Forgive my Russian, everybody. It's terrible. Anyway, Vasily, let's call him Vasily, writes this book called Survival Quest, which is book 1 in The Way of the Shaman. It's an interesting concept. We basically live in a modern technological world, But instead of prisoners going to jail, they have to go into this virtual world where it's recreation for everybody else. You and I can go into this world called Barlonia and have a great time playing the game. There are pain sensors that are removed. So if you and I are, in some mythical fight, we're not physically feeling any pain. However, prisoners that get sent to Barlonia, those pain sensors are turned off. So you feel absolutely everything. And not only that, you have to do all the grunt work for all the people that are actually playing the game. So if those players in game want game currency, they're going to get it from essentially people mining almost as slaves within this game because they're prisoners in real life. Here's the rub. Our main character, Mayhan, he's in jail for something that he didn't even know was a crime, but somebody else put him there. So it's a little bit of a mystery to find out why he's even in jail in the first place. He discovers his powers once he's in game, and now his biggest challenge is, how can I use my shaman powers to get me out of this sort of in-game prison scenario and actually have a life here and figure out who put me here in the first place? I really liked this book. As the series went on, there was a couple of books towards the end that didn't land as much for me. But today we're talking about book ones, and The Way of the Shaman is a fantastic book one. A lot of people agree with me. There's over 10,000 Goodreads ratings. There is an average star score of 4.17. Over on Amazon, we've got over 2,500 ratings with an average star score of 4.5. It's great. It's survival quest. It is The Way of the Shaman. That's number 9 on our list today. Now, the 10th series on the list is by an author that I happen to know personally. His name is Dr. Awaken Kong. The series is called The Chaos Seeds, and the story is The Land. Book 1 is called The Land Founding. This is very much a Portal type of a VR adventure where we have a character who's been sucked into another world. He's for sure way too powerful than everybody else. He builds himself a village. He builds himself a community. If you're a kind of person that likes base building like we talked about in some of the other series, I think you'll find something to love here as our main character, Richter, builds a virtual city, builds a virtual village called the Mist Village. Now, Awaken Kong, he's done interviews before on Daniel Green's channel a few years ago. He has been a huge proponent of LitRPG. And he's almost, kind of called himself the father of American LitRPG. I believe that's very tongue-in-cheek. I think others in the community disagree. But even so, he's a tremendous guy. He's done so much for indie authors that if you're interested in really kind of some of the starting places of where LitRPG came from, and to learn more about Awaken Kong himself, I can't think of a better place to go than start with his book 1, The Land Founding. It's got, check this out, over 24,000 Goodreads ratings. It's got an average star score of 4.18. Over on Amazon, it's got 13,000 plus ratings with an average star score of 4.2. And let me tell you, those star ratings got a little review bombed, not because his last book wasn't good, but because it took him longer than the community wanted for him to pull out, his next book or to put out his next book. So yeah, his rating is actually a little bit higher than that. And if you combine all of his books in the Chaos Seeds, all the ratings, he's got over 100,000 ratings as an author of LitRPG, right? This little subsection of fantasy that, everyone's kind of put into the corner. I don't think so. You're going to start to see, and you are already seeing, LitRPG really come up quite a bit. And that's going to get me to the one for the road today. I made LitRPG content for a few reasons. Number one, I didn't even realize this, but the number one video on the BellTube channel right now in terms of views is the LitRPG starter guide. I'm out here every week, a couple of times a week, talking about epic fantasy and cozy fantasy and space opera and dark fantasy and hard sci-fi, all these genres. And what's my most watched video? The LitRPG starter guide. So that tells me that there's people that are interested in this. It also tells me that there's a lot of people out there like me that love Dungeon Crawler Carl, but maybe unlike me, don't know where to go next. So I created this video with that exact intent to give you 10 options if you want to go beyond Dungeon Crawler Carl. If this genre is just fun for you, then here's some great options, which is our one for the road, and that's read what you want. If something seems fun for you, read it. If romantasy sounds fun to you, read it. If sci-fi, fantasy, traditional historical fiction, or just, contemporary fiction, if nonfiction, whatever it is that appeals to you, read it. Don't worry about what everybody else thinks, because I have to tell you, when I started this channel, I didn't really see any other booktubers talking very much about LitRPG. Now I'm seeing it a lot more often. I think in the coming months, and I know for sure in the coming years, I'm going to see a ton of it. And I hope to be a part of it. I hope to share with you some of the most amazing times I've had reading have been in LitRPG. You know what? Every movie I see doesn't need to win an Academy Award for Best Drama. Sometimes I want to go see a comedy, or sometimes I just want a great action flick, right? Sometimes I want a popcorn read, and that can be what LitRPG is for you, the same way it is in for me if you want to throw it in between something like Malazan, or Realm of the Elderlings, or The Sun Eater, or Red Rising, or all of these series that just take so much brain power. LitRPG is a blast. Read what you want. And by the way, if you like lists like this and you like kind of a fun look at fantasy and science fiction and you kind of like my vibe, consider liking this video. That's that thumbs up button. Maybe hit the subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. We just went over 2,000 subscribers yesterday. We've only been doing this as of filming about 6 months and a week. So the channel is really growing exponentially. I am so grateful and thankful to have everybody here. But if this is something that you like and you want to be part of our community, consider subscribing. Otherwise, for everybody else, I will see you in the comments. Let me know what you think about some of these series. Let me know what interests you. And like I mentioned earlier, there are quite a few people who read a ton of LitRPG that are BellTube community members. If you write a question, not only will I answer them, but you'll probably get some other experts as well. That's what I've got for you today. Stay positive, everybody. And here's your fortune.